Alright, welcome back to part 3 of the seed stitch scarf pattern. And today I've gotten my scarf as long as I wish it to be, so I am going to start binding off. So to do that, you just knit one stitch, knit another, and then I am very gently going to lift the first stitch over top of the second one and pull that second stitch through. So now I only have one stitch left on my needle. And then I'm going to go and knit another stitch. And again, I'm going to lift up the second, place it over top, or lift up the first, place it over top of the one I just did, and pull it through. And I'm just going to keep repeating that until I get to the end of my stitches. And you want to try and make sure you're not doing it super tight because you do want a little bit of give in the bind off. As you can see, we're starting to get a nice finished edge on the scarf. Of course, one important thing to remember is that when you're getting, say, close to the end of your ball of yarn, you want to make sure you do have enough yarn left to actually finish the bind off. Otherwise, you'll have to go back a few rows to give yourself enough yarn to properly bind off. Alright, so now I've gotten to the last stitch. Just again do that. And then you'll see I'm left with this stitch right here still left on the needle. So I'm going to leave that on my needle for a moment, and I'm going to cut the yarn because I still have a fair amount left, leaving myself enough length to finish off this and properly weave in the end into the scarf. I'm going to pick out the tapestry needle I'm going to be using. Since I'm using a thick yarn, I need one that has a fairly wide opening so that the yarn will actually fit through. And it can be a little tricky to get the yarn to go through. It's just something you just have to keep trying at sometimes. Alright. So now that I have this on the needle, I'm going to take it and go through the loop, the stitch there, through the back, and just start pulling that tight. But before I do, I'm going to take it off the needle, pull it nice and tight. So there, now that end is nice and secured. So then the last thing we have to do after we have just finished binding off is to weave in this end. So what I'm going to do is just ever so gently take it down and around like that. Pull it through. Now you see it started to bunch there if I pulled it too tight. You don't want to do that. So you want to give it just enough so that it's there but not causing any bunching. And I'm going to go back up. And back down. I'm actually going to finish weaving this in through my bind off, because with this pattern you don't want too many, otherwise you will start to be able to see it through there. So just start weaving it in. Now I left myself a pretty long tail here, so I am not going to weave in that entire length. I'm just going to go until I feel like the yarn should stay fairly snugly in place where I have put it. Give it a few tugs, that way whenever it moves it's not going to want to come popping out. Again, even if it does start to come out from where you did it, because we did the little knot there, your project should not unravel, but then you have to weave in the ends again, and that can get a little tedious. So you just snip off whatever extra at the end you have, and there you go. It's nice and tucked away, and should stay put. The last thing you have to do is again weave in this end from where we began. Now if you're still, say, working on knitting your project and this is getting in your way, you can weave it in before you finish the project. I typically wait just in case for some reason I decide to completely rip out the project. That way I don't have a finished end here that I would then have to, say, lose some of the length of the yarn. If you do, it's not necessarily a huge deal. Just we try not to waste yarn if we don't have to. So again, I'm just gonna start weaving this end through. And as I said before, I'm only going to do this enough so that I have it securely tucked away. Giving a few tugs, that way when the scarf moves it doesn't want to pop out. Back down. And that should be just enough. Take it off my needle, get a little bit of a trim, and there we go. And alright, and there you have it. We have a completed seed stitch scarf. Now, and you can keep this for yourself, give it away for maybe a Christmas present. And I hope you have enjoyed this series and that you have been successful in completing your project. And I hope you will check back again to see what our next videos are going to be. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.